Hi. Look, there are countless moments that make up the story of Australia. But every now and then, there's a special moment, a defining moment. I'm Mikey Robbins, and I'm here at the National Museum of Australia to check out their project, Defining Moments in Australian History. Look, what we're going to do is we're going to go behind the scenes. We're going to check out some objects that tell the stories about these moments, about who we are. Now we're going to look at one of the more unusual items in the museum for our defining moments. It's actually a rabbit skin rug. And to explain why we've chosen it, I've got Martha Sear here. Nice to meet you, Martha.
G'day.
Now, explain the rabbit skin rug and why it's one of our defining moments.
Well, one of the defining moments in Australian history has got to be 1859, the introduction of the European wild rabbit.
Now, you say the European wild rabbit because rabbits had been here since the First Fleet.
Yeah, they came with the First Fleet. There were lots of scattered populations, but they didn't really go feral until that release in the 1850s.
It just sounds like me in my teenage years. I was fine for a while, then I went feral.
Yeah.
So they got out in the 1850s. So when did they start becoming a problem?
Oh, pretty much straight away.
Yeah?
Yeah, they were brought in for gentlemen to go hunting, but the rabbits just took off. There were very few curbs to them, few predators. The breeding environment was absolutely perfect. They could breed all through the year.
Because how many litters do they have a year?
5 to 7.
Wow.
So they spread unbelievably quickly. Probably the quickest spread of a mammal anywhere in the world ever.
Right.
So they started out near Geelong in 1859. So they moved roughly 100 kilometres a year. So by 1910, they've reached the Tropic of Capricorn.
So when I'm looking at this rug, how did the museum acquire it and what's its actual history?
Yeah, so this is a rug that was made in 1934, and it was made from skins that were collected by a young man named Ralph Parkes. Ralph was a Sydney boy,
Yeah.
but he decided he wanted to live on the land.
Right.
So he moved out to a property out in the bush, and as part of his jackarooing duties, he trapped rabbits. You know, everyone did it at the time. It was the 30s. Rabbits were there in their hundreds of millions out in the bush.
Right.
And so Ralph trapped the rabbits, skinned them himself, and then he sent the skins back to his parents who lived in Lindfield in Sydney.
Right.
And they got them made up into a rug. They sent them to a furrier.
My grandfather was a furrier.
Yeah.
So I remember as a kid having skins like this in our garage. We know the rabbit was a plague, but we had that Australian knack of trying to turn it to our advantage as well.
Yeah, we sure did. Rabbits became central to Australian culture and the survival of people in difficult times. If you didn't have a job, you could go out and become a rabbito.
A rabbito?
You could trap them, people would pay you to shoot them. You could sell the skin, sometimes you could sell the meat. And certainly poor people, rabbits were free.
Well, I remember my mother would never eat rabbit because she was born in the Depression and that's all they had to eat.
Yeah.
So-
So just free meat running around. If you could trap them, if you could catch them, you could get them. They were the staple of people's diets in the Depression.
Now, of course, we've had many attempts to try and cull the rabbit population. When did we realise we had a problem?
Oh, we knew by the 1880s we had a big problem, a really big problem. Government started to introduce bounty schemes. They offered rewards so people would come up with the best ways of getting rid of them. They tried everything: cats, dogs, rabbit-proof fences.
Where does the rabbit rank in terms of, when we think of the cane toad, foxes, where does it rank in terms of invasive species?
Yeah, I think it's arguably the worst vertebrate pest that's ever come into Australia.
Right.
I mean, the devastation they caused to all of our arable land, our pastoral land, they ate everything to the ground.
Right.
They killed trees, they killed bushes, they killed the grass, they left the paddocks bare. And that meant that the soil blew away. They pushed out all of the native marsupials, the bettong, the bandicoot, the bilby, and then the devastation that they caused the extinction of countless plant species.
We're looking at this rabbit skin rug. Remove yourself from being a curator, and I just want to ask you, how does it affect you personally when you look at this object?
First of all, I think I'm struck by the rabbits themselves. There's more than 70 rabbits in there, and even though I know that the rabbit has decimated Australia's environment, it's an environmental catastrophe, it still makes me feel a bit sad to think of the 70 rabbits that were killed to make the rug.
You have a far kinder soul than me.
I know. But then I think about, well, there's 70 there, and I know that there are millions and hundreds of millions of rabbits out there and destroying our environment.
Because after Khaleesi, we thought we'd solved it. How many rabbits are still out there? But, you don't have to name them.
Oh, there's Peter and Cottontail.
Flopsy.
That's right.
No, but seriously, what's the best guesstimate we have at the moment?
Best guesstimate at the moment, about 150 to 200 million.
So they still are a problem.
It's still out there.
Over 100 years later.
Yep, for sure.
Thanks for watching, but it doesn't end here. We want you to join the conversation. Go to the National Museum of Australia's website, that's nma.gov.au, and let us know what you think are the defining moments in Australian history. We'd love to hear your opinion. Once again, thanks for watching. See you soon.